The silence that descends after midnight is rarely empty. It's a pregnant pause, a space where the veil between worlds thins and things that should remain unseen begin to stir. Most people sleep soundly, oblivious to the unseen currents that flow beneath the surface of our mundane reality. They dismiss the creaks of old houses, the rustle of leaves outside their windows, the fleeting shadows that dance at the edge of their vision, as mere figments of an overactive imagination. But the truth, my friends, is far more terrifying. Those whispers you sometimes hear when you're utterly alone, those chilling sensations of being watched, they are not phantoms of the mind. They are echoes from a place beyond our comprehension, fragments of stories that should never have been unearthed, tales of true horror that cling to the fabric of existence like dried bloodstains on ancient stone. Tonight we venture into that abyss, into the realm of real terror, where the nightmares that plague our slumber bleed into the waking world. These are not mere campfire stories. They are echoes of souls lost, of shadows that linger, of truths so profound and disturbing that they have the power to shatter the fragile peace you hold dear. 90% of people who hear these stories wish they never had, because once you truly listen, once you open your mind to the possibility that these horrors are not confined to fiction, sleep becomes a distant, fragile memory. Most people who hear this story convince themselves it's just a legend, a folktale spun to frighten children, or to explain away the inexplicable. They cling to the comfortable illusion of control, to the belief that our world is a predictable, rational place governed by immutable laws. They find solace in the mundane, in the predictable rhythm of daily life, seeking to shield themselves from the unsettling truth that lurks just beyond the lamplight. They dismiss the unsettling coincidences, the inexplicable phenomena, the lingering unease that sometimes settles upon a place like a shroud of cold ashes, as mere products of circumstance or mass hysteria. They build walls of disbelief around their minds, sturdy fortifications designed to keep the darkness at bay. But the walls of the mind, however strong they may seem, are surprisingly fragile. They can be breached by a single, undeniable truth, by an experience so profoundly disturbing that it cracks their carefully constructed reality. The ones who lived it, however, never slept the same way again. Their nights became a battlefield, their dreams a canvas for the terrors they witnessed firsthand. And neither will you after tonight, because the stories I bring you are not born of fantasy but of real, palpable dread, of experiences that claw at the edges of sanity, leaving indelible scars upon the souls of those who dare to confront them. The moment everything changed for me was the night I heard the scratching. It wasn't the usual sound of branches against a window pane or a rodent in the walls. This was a deliberate, rhythmic scraping, a sound that seemed to emanate from inside my own head, yet also from the very foundations of the earth. I lay paralyzed, the sweat beading on my forehead, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. The darkness in my room felt oppressive, alive, as if it were breathing with me, watching me. Every instinct screamed at me to flee, to run into the indifferent night, but my limbs were heavy, bound by an unseen force. This is the insidious nature of true fear. It doesn't always manifest as a scream or a frantic dash, but as a creeping, suffocating paralysis, a realization that you are utterly, irrevocably exposed. This sound, this persistent, unnerving scrape, was the first whisper from beyond, a herald of the truths I was about to uncover. It was the moment I stopped believing in the ordinary and began to understand that the world I thought I knew was merely a thin veneer, easily torn by forces that operate on principles we cannot fathom, forces that leave behind only chilling evidence and broken lives. I used to believe that the greatest horrors were confined to ancient myths and the fevered imaginations of storytellers. I subscribed to the comforting notion that our scientific understanding had mapped out the entirety of existence, leaving no room for the supernatural or the malevolent. I believed that the shadows were merely the absence of light, that the inexplicable was simply a gap in our knowledge, waiting to be filled by reason. Oh, how tragically wrong I was. What I witnessed, what I have come to understand, shattered that illusion completely. The universe is not a tidy, well-ordered machine. It is a vast, chaotic expanse filled with unseen entities, ancient grudges and forces that operate with a terrifying indifference to human suffering. The shadows are not empty, they are hiding places. The inexplicable is not a lack of knowledge, it is a presence. The moment I stepped onto the path of revelation, I understood that the greatest mistake anyone made was thinking this wasn't real, that these tales were mere fiction designed to entertain. The reality is that these occurrences are deeply woven into the fabric of our existence, and their tendrils reach out to ensnare us all if we allow them. The old woman who lived at the edge of town spoke in riddles and half-truths, her eyes like chips of obsidian that seemed to hold the accumulated sorrow of centuries. She warned me, not with malice, but with a weary resignation, that some doors, once opened, can never be fully closed. Her cottage was a place where time seemed to warp, where the air was thick with the scent of dried herbs, and something else, something ancient and metallic, like dried blood. She spoke of an entity, a shadow that fed on despair, that clung to places where great suffering had occurred, weaving itself into the very mortar and stone. She described its presence not as a physical form, but as a creeping chill, a suffocating weight, a chorus of silent screams that only the truly attuned could perceive. Her words were like seeds of dread, planted in the fertile soil of my burgeoning fear. She told me that this entity didn't just exist, it waited patiently for an invitation, however unwitting, to manifest its influence. It was a lesson I learned through a terrifyingly personal encounter, a lesson etched into my soul with a burning brand of pure terror. The true horror, the kind that seeps into your bones and whispers doubts into the quiet moments of your life, rarely announces itself with a thunderclap. It arrives like a thief in the night, a subtle shift in the atmosphere, a chilling premonition that settles upon you without reason. It's the feeling that the air has grown heavy, the light has dimmed even in the brightest of days, and that unseen eyes are fixed upon your every move. This is the signature of a presence that is not merely observing but actively seeking to exert its influence, to weave its dark tapestry around your life. I remember a small village nestled in the hollows of forgotten hills, a place where the laughter of children had long since faded, replaced by a pervasive silence. The houses stood like skeletal remains against a perpetually gray sky, their windows dark, empty sockets staring out at the world with an unsettling vacancy. The villagers, when they could be found, spoke in hushed, fearful tones, their faces etched with a weariness that spoke of a battle lost long ago. They lived under a perpetual shadow, a palpable sense of dread that no amount of sunlight could dissipate. This was not a place of natural decay. It was a place where something ancient and malevolent had taken root, slowly, inexorably, draining the very life force from its surroundings. The first concrete sign that something was profoundly wrong came not from a ghostly apparition, but from the very fabric of reality itself. Objects in my home began to move when I wasn't looking. Doors I had firmly shut would be found ajar. My keys would vanish from their usual hook, only to reappear in the most illogical of places, and the faint scent of ozone, like after a lightning strike, would permeate rooms where no storm had occurred. These were not the actions of a poltergeist, not the playful or even angry disturbances of a restless spirit. This felt different. It felt deliberate. It felt like an intelligence was testing the boundaries, probing for weaknesses, subtly asserting its dominion. It was as if the house itself was breathing a different kind of air, an air thick with unseen intent. This careful, almost scientific dismantling of my reality was far more terrifying than any sudden shock. It was a slow, creeping invasion, an insidious erosion of certainty that left me questioning my own senses, wondering if I was losing my grip on the world entirely. Each displaced object, each misplaced item, was another brick chipped away from the fortress of my sanity. I recall a story whispered to me by a former investigator, a man whose eyes held the haunted look of one who has seen too much. He spoke of a house where the family had been plagued by a persistent, low hum that no instrument could detect. It wasn't audible in the conventional sense, but they felt it, a vibration deep within their bones, a discordant note that gnawed at their nerves. It drove them to sleeplessness, to paranoia, and eventually to violence. The hum, he explained, wasn't a sound at all, but a form of subtle psychic pressure, a manifestation of an entity that existed on a different vibrational frequency, attempting to harmonize with our reality by disrupting it. It was like a cracked mirror, reflecting a distorted reality, the dissonance slowly shattering the minds of those exposed to it. This resonance, this unwelcome frequency, was the entity's way of making its presence known, of preparing the ground for something far more sinister. It was the unseen hand that nudged them towards the precipice, a slow descent into madness orchestrated by an unseen, unheard force. The sheer isolation of such experiences amplifies the terror tenfold. When you are the sole witness to these anomalies, the world around you seems to conspire against your sanity. Friends dismiss your concerns as stress, family members suggest therapy, and doctors offer medication for an ailment that has no name in their medical dictionaries. The cold ashes of their disbelief settle upon your hopes, extinguishing any flicker of validation. You become a pariah, an object of pity or suspicion, trapped within a reality that no one else can perceive. It's a lonely abyss, where the only company you keep are the encroaching shadows and the chilling whispers that seem to emanate from the very walls of your existence. This isolation breeds a profound sense of helplessness, a dawning realization that you are utterly alone in your struggle against forces that defy conventional understanding. It is in this crucible of loneliness that the true psychological horror takes root, feeding on your fear and despair, making you question your own perception of reality. But the truth is far darker than mere psychological distress. These phenomena are not simply figments of a troubled mind. They are tangible manifestations of a reality that exists just beyond our perception, a realm populated by entities that operate on principles alien to our own. They are the whispers of the forbidden, the echoes of ancient pacts, the residual energies of acts so horrific they have stained the very fabric of time. When you feel that inexplicable chill, that prickle of dread, it is not your imagination playing tricks. It is the brush of something other, something cold and calculating, observing you, perhaps even influencing you. This is the reality that lurks beneath the surface, a terrifying tapestry woven from fear, despair, and the unseen. It is a darkness that predates humanity, a primal force that thrives on the dissolution of order and the erosion of sanity. The entities that inhabit this realm are not bound by the laws of physics or the conventions of morality. They are pure, unadulterated malevolence, their existence a constant threat to the fragile order we strive to maintain. And this is where the story takes a turn you won't forget. Consider the folklore of the Wendigo, a creature born of greed and starvation, a spirit that embodies insatiable hunger. It is said to stalk the frozen wastes, a gaunt, spectral figure, driven by an unending craving for human flesh. But the Wendigo is more than just a monster of the wilderness. It is a potent metaphor for the destructive forces within ourselves, the primal urges that, when unchecked, consume us from within. It represents the parasitic nature of certain entities, those that don't just feed on fear, but on the very essence of a person's soul, leaving behind an empty husk. This isn't merely a cautionary tale. It's a warning about the unseen connections that can form between us and forces we do not understand. Connections that can drain our vitality, twist our desires, and ultimately lead us to become something less than human. The legend serves as a dark mirror, reflecting the potential for darkness that resides not only in the world around us, but also within our own hearts. A chilling reminder of what we might become if we succumb to our basest instincts. The most disturbing aspect of these encounters is the feeling of being seen by something utterly alien. It's not the gaze of a predator or the scrutiny of a fellow human. It's a profound, soul-piercing observation from an intelligence that lacks empathy, that perceives you not as a sentient being, but as a resource, a source of energy, or perhaps a plaything. Imagine the vast cold emptiness of space, and then imagine an eye within that void, an eye that has witnessed the birth and death of stars, an eye that regards your entire existence as less than a fleeting spark. This is the nature of the entities we sometimes brush against. They operate on a scale so immense, with motives so inscrutable, that human comprehension is utterly irrelevant to them. This detachment, this utter lack of connection, is what makes their observation so terrifying. It strips away any notion of shared experience or common ground, leaving you feeling like an insignificant microbe under a cosmic microscope, utterly vulnerable and incomprehensible to the observer. There was a period in my life, not so long ago, when the shadows in my room seemed to deepen and writhe with a life of their own. It began subtly, with fleeting movements at the periphery of my vision, then escalated to distinct shapes that seemed to coalesce and disperse like smoke. I started to feel a constant pressure, a weight on my chest that made breathing difficult, as if something unseen was lying upon me. Sleep offered no respite. My dreams were vivid, terrifying landscapes populated by distorted figures that whispered incomprehensible truths. One particular image haunted me, a figure composed entirely of shadow, its form constantly shifting, its presence radiating an ancient, malevolent cold. It never spoke, never attacked, but simply watched, its unseen gaze a palpable force that filled me with an existential dread. This wasn't a dream. It felt like a visitation, an intrusion into my most private sanctuary. The boundary between my waking life and my nightmares had dissolved, leaving me in a state of perpetual unease, forever looking over my shoulder, forever feeling the chill of unseen eyes. This is not a descent into madness. It is an awakening to a more terrifying reality. The veil has been lifted, and what lies beyond is a tapestry woven with threads of cosmic horror and primal fear. The entities we speak of are not mere ghosts or demons in the traditional sense. They are often alien intelligences, ancient beings that predate our planet, perhaps even our galaxy, forces that exist in dimensions beyond our physical senses. Their presence can warp our perception, induce hallucinations, and leave behind residual energy signatures that can affect entire locations, creating pockets of palpable dread. These are the kinds of hauntings that defy exorcism, the kinds of phenomena that scientific instruments struggle to quantify because they operate outside the known laws of physics. They are the shadows that cannot be dispelled by light, the whispers that cannot be silenced by reason, the chilling touch of the unknown that reminds us of our minuscule place in a vast, indifferent cosmos. The most chilling revelation, one that arrived like a cold whisper from beyond, is that these entities are not always acting independently. Sometimes, they seem to be drawn to specific individuals, almost as if they are invited. This invitation can be subconscious, born from a particular mindset, a deep-seated despair, or an unhealthy fascination with the darker aspects of existence. Think of the lore surrounding certain cursed objects, artifacts imbued with negative energy, or places where tragedy has unfolded. These become focal points, beacons that attract these shadowy presences. It's as if they are drawn to the scent of decay, both physical and spiritual, seeking fertile ground to implant their influence. This concept is deeply unsettling because it suggests a degree of complicity, however unintentional, on our part. The cracked mirrors we hold up to our souls can reflect not just our own image, but the hungry void that seeks to consume it. Consider the ancient rites and forbidden texts that speak of summoning. These are not mere fantasies. They are records, however distorted, of attempts to breach the veil, to establish contact with intelligences from realms unknown. The symbols, the incantations, the rituals, they are keys, designed to unlock doors that were meant to remain shut. When these doors are opened, even accidentally, the consequences can be catastrophic. It is like stepping into a storm without shelter, exposing oneself to forces that are indifferent to survival. The residual energy left behind by such forbidden acts can linger for centuries, a palpable aura of dread that permeates a location, drawing in those who are sensitive or those who are simply unlucky. These places become dark sanctuaries, where the echoes of the past can manifest with a terrifying immediacy, a stark reminder that some knowledge comes at an unbearable price. The sheer unpredictability of these occurrences is a hallmark of their terrifying nature. You can't reason with them, you can't bargain with them, and you certainly can't fight them in any conventional sense. They operate on a plane of existence that is beyond our physical grasp. Imagine trying to catch smoke with your bare hands, or trying to silence a scream that exists only in your mind. This lack of tangible form, this elusiveness, is precisely what makes them so terrifying. They exploit our deepest fears, our need for control, our desire for understanding. When those pillars of our reality are shaken, when we realize that we are not masters of our domain but merely vulnerable inhabitants, the true horror begins. It is the horror of powerlessness, of being at the mercy of forces that are as ancient as they are inscrutable, forces that leave behind only the cold ashes of their passing. One particularly harrowing account involved a family who moved into an old house. Within weeks, the youngest child began to talk to an imaginary friend who lived in the crawl space. This friend was described as tall and shadowy, with eyes that didn't blink. The parents, initially dismissing it, grew concerned when the child started exhibiting strange behaviors, speaking in a deep, raspy voice that wasn't her own, and displaying an unusual aggression. The family dog, usually docile, became ferociously protective of the child, constantly growling and barking towards the crawl space. Its fur bristled with fear. The investigator called in recognized the signs. An entity had attached itself to the child, feeding on her innocence, its presence slowly corrupting her. The entity wasn't just a voice, it was a parasitic consciousness, seeking to manifest through its host, using the child as a conduit to the physical world. The chilling silence from the crawl space, the unnatural stillness of the house, all pointed to a malevolent presence that had found a foothold. This parasitic nature extends beyond simple fear. These entities can feed on our emotions, our anxieties, our very life force. They are drawn to places and people that exude vulnerability, that resonate with a certain frequency of despair or fear. It's like a spiritual magnetism, drawing them closer. The old houses, the sites of tragedy, they are not just locations, they are conduits, places where the veil is thin and the echoes of suffering are strong. They become feeding grounds, places where these entities can sustain themselves, and from which they can extend their influence. The dried blood of past traumas acts as a potent lure, a dark perfume that attracts these unwelcome guests. The persistent unease in such places is not just a feeling, it is the palpable presence of something that is drawing sustenance from the lingering echoes of pain and fear, making the air heavy with its unseen hunger. The true horror is that these entities often don't seek to destroy us outright, at least not at first. They prefer a slow, insidious erosion, They want to break us down, to weaken our resolve, to sow seeds of doubt and despair. They thrive on the psychological torment, the gradual descent into paranoia and fear. This is far more disturbing than a sudden violent encounter, because it involves a prolonged period of suffering, a slow dismantling of the self. It's like being trapped in a room with a creeping poison, knowing it's there, feeling its effects, but being powerless to stop it. Each creaking door, each rustle of unseen movement, becomes a catalyst for escalating dread, a torment that chips away at your sanity, piece by agonizing piece, until there is nothing left but a hollow shell. The concept of residual hauntings versus intelligent hauntings is critical here. Residual energy is like a recording, a psychic imprint of a past event or emotion that plays out repeatedly. An intelligent haunting, however, involves a conscious entity, an awareness that interacts with its environment and with the living. The phenomena I've been describing, the deliberate movement of objects, the palpable sense of being watched, the feeling of malevolent intent, these point to intelligent hauntings, to entities that are not simply replaying a past event, but are actively engaged in a present interaction. This distinction is crucial because it implies purpose, an agenda, a consciousness that has its own desires and motivations, however alien they may be to us. The truly terrifying thought is that these intelligences might see us not as equals, but as less, as instruments to be used or obstacles to be removed. What truly chills me to the bone is the realization that these encounters are not isolated incidents happening to a select few. They are part of a larger, ongoing narrative that plays out in the unseen corners of our world. The stories we hear, the legends we dismiss, are often fragments of this larger truth. The shadows are not empty, and the silence is not silent. It is filled with whispers, with ancient stirrings, with intelligences that operate on principles far removed from our own. We are not alone in this universe, and the company we keep might be far more terrifying than we can possibly imagine. The universe is not merely vast, it is also inhabited by forces that are indifferent, or perhaps even hostile to our existence. Understanding this is not about succumbing to fear, but about acknowledging the profound mystery and potential danger that lies just beyond the periphery of our everyday lives, a darkness that waits patiently. The common thread woven through all these accounts, the chilling realization that binds them together, is the profound sense of dread that lingers long after the event itself. It's not the fleeting fright of a jump scare in a movie. It's a deep, persistent restlessness, a feeling that a part of you has been irrevocably altered. It's the knowledge that the safe, predictable world you once inhabited has been fractured, revealing glimpses of a terrifying, chaotic abyss. This persistent unease, this attraction to the unknown that gnaws at your peace, is the true mark of these encounters. It's the signature of a brush with something that transcends ordinary experience, something that has left an indelible, haunting imprint upon your soul. The memories become like dried blood stains on the fabric of your consciousness, impossible to scrub away, forever reminding you of what lies beneath the surface of reality. And this is where we must pause, not in fear, but in understanding. The darkness I speak of is not to be confronted recklessly, but to be acknowledged. The shadows hold secrets, yes, but they also hold warnings. The whispers from beyond are not just tales of terror, they are echoes of lessons learned, often at a terrible cost. Every soul that joins this circle of awareness, every mind that opens to these disturbing truths, feeds the voice that whispers from the darkness, not by empowering it, but by understanding it, by acknowledging its presence, and thus by strengthening our collective ability to navigate its perilous currents. Do you feel this dark message was meant for you? Perhaps it was a warning, perhaps it was a revelation, but in either case, it has now touched you. If you feel the pull of the unknown, If these whispers resonate with a truth you've long suspected but dared not voice, then consider stepping closer to the edge of the abyss. Every soul that joins feeds the voice that whispers from the darkness, not by amplifying its power, but by joining a community that seeks to understand, to document, and to navigate the terrifying truths that lie just beyond the veil. Your presence strengthens our collective vigilance. The knowledge we share here is a shield, however fragile, against the encroaching unknown. Consider this an invitation, not to fear, but to awareness, a step into a world where the mundane and the monstrous are closer than you think, a journey into the heart of mystery. The path ahead is shrouded in shadow, but together we can illuminate its most terrifying contours.